Hey guys, hello everybody online who are patching in from all the various social media streams and YouTube and whatnot. So, hola to everybody in the virtual world. I wish you could be with us, drinking wine and having fun and interacting in real life. Sorry for you guys. But I'm kind of joking, but I do really want to just say hi to Chrissy and Helena, my two awesome daughters. It's your dad speaking. I hope you're not going to stay too late tonight. But just also massive thanks to Workshop 17, this amazing venue tonight. Backsburg, the Back family who've backed us. They've had our back. Too many jokes. Since the beginning, and just an amazing crowd. Sir Fruit, the Baker brothers, Sir David and Sir Patrick, just amazing company in itself. Goodleaf, Parcel Ninja, Justin Drennan, absolute legend. Creed Living, Roxy Davis, whoop, who is here in the audience, and she is just an amazing entrepreneur herself, and her team, Gio, Charlotte, and just about everybody in their team, just absolute legends. Hala, Black Magic, Issa Zayo, Adam Latte, Paula, and the crew. Thank you for getting us live. This is the tech team that's broadcasting us live. And then Eclipse Communication, Jackie, Steve, Andrea, Jaylene, Mon, and Nicole, and everybody. Just a really, really great collaboration of great people who can make all of this happen. And so just a massive thank you to you guys for coming out. Thanks to all the people patching in live from wherever you are around the world. Thank you for sending in all your questions. It's really appreciated. Again, I think I can't remember if I was live when I mentioned it, but there's a 14,000 Rand HP laptop that's going to be given away to the best question of the night. And I will be back a little bit later to announce that. But lastly from me, before I step away, is a massive thank you to our speakers tonight, our illustrious panel, and for Lelemba for stepping in to take the MC duties. Absolute legends, all three of you. And I can't wait to get stuck into this conversation. So a big hand for our panel tonight. Thank you, guys.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for making it out here today, and for everybody that's online. We're happy that you're tuning in. I think that is a very exciting topic that we have on tonight. And one of the things that we want to deliberately do is that because it's so important, we don't want to leave the questions only up to me and what we prepared, because I think you might also have questions. We've got a really long list from the community, which just shows just how interested people are in this topic. And so we also want to leave some space for the people who are here physically to ask their own questions. And so to kick off first, I would love to ask my two panelists to give us their 2-minute quick intros and just a little bit of a look-see into the background. Erin, could we start with you?
Yes, Lelemba, I thought you were going to introduce me. But no, I can absolutely jump in. I'm Erin Louw. I'm the founder or dream maker for Zena, which is the platform that we've introduced about 3 months ago. It was my longest pregnancy ever. The thought and the idea came in 2019 at an event I attended in Amsterdam, and the conversations with a phenomenal leadership team just came from that. And during COVID, it was heartbreaking for me to see how women in particular struggle to keep up. And a lot of them stepped away to take on caring duties. And one of the things that came out of that for me was just what a shame it would be if they always say, never waste a good crisis. So that was a proper crisis, and I didn't want to let it go to waste. So the whole idea about creating platforms and environments for women came from there. My background's in medicine and psychology, and then hardly spent any time there, fell in love and fell into the financial space. I've been for 16 years in financial services, of which the last 6 years have been in an executive role for brand marketing and then HR for the Retail Capital Group. And we have done amazing things, of which Zena is then the most recent addition to the family. That's me.
Thank you. Over to you. Thank you. Good evening. So, sure, Erin, follow up on that. My story is less spicy, but I'm I'm a township retail specialist. So I run a business called Cassie Catalyst, and also kind of stumbled into that. Started out in the corporate space as a banker, working with high net worth and ultra high net worth clients, and realized that I wasn't fulfilling my social element. I wasn't doing enough for my community because none of my clients at these big banks were black people from my community, from townships. I'm a local, I grew up here in Langa, so I felt like I needed to go back and give something back to my community, and it was time. So after 5 years in that space, I left and started my journey back into townships, and realized while I was there that the 7 years that I'd spent abroad had actually given me probably the best platform to see what could be possible in the spaces that I'd grown up in, and realizing for the first time about the impact that perspective plays, right, in that space, and being able to then repackage what I saw in a way that would make it marketable for the urban space. And living outside of South Africa, I think it makes you look back at your home country and understand that we all, as South Africans, have these unconscious biases, and part of that unconscious bias also forces us into our own little silos that prevent us from understanding what the other side looks like. So township consumers think every white person, every banker is against them because of their race. And every funder or banker in an urban space is looking at us and thinking nothing can thrive there. So there was this divide, and I felt like I was adequately positioned to then respond to that need. And that's how I got here.
Oh, great. Please give our panelists a round of applause. And a quick intro to me. My background is finance. I've worked in government. I've worked in corporate. I was part of a startup that raised over $30 million and really scaled across Africa. And I left to get into the investment space, particularly to invest in women entrepreneurs. Because in a lot of the platforms that we were finding ourselves in, it became pretty clear just from walking the streets that there were very few women that were raising this type of ticket sizes, right from your $10,000 right to your $30 million. And so getting into this space, these problems just became clearer and clearer and clearer. And so if I throw it to 2021, last year, we saw a whopping $3.2 billion being invested into businesses in Africa from the VC space. However, 17% of those were from diverse teams, which means both men and women. 81% of that was from men only, and only 1% went into female-only businesses, which is pretty pathetic, and it's really like little crumbs being thrown into women-only businesses. And so, from your platform, Zena, from the Zena platform, what are the unique challenges that you are feeling the South African women particularly might be facing that prevents them from accessing funding? Yeah.
Lelemba, we can see it on the Zena platform, but if I have to even draw the parallel broader than that, it's just symptomatic of entrepreneurship in South Africa in general. So I do think that we have to look at this as just one of the elements, but in particular what we see when it comes to women is that there is certain biases, especially where women typically aren't seen that they have the experience to run a business, and that kind of just short runway and exposure that they've had often count against them because they enter into the entrepreneurial space fairly late, which makes that track record fairly short, and that obviously limits access. But the other challenge is that most of the industries that women typically excel in is non-asset-based environments. Your hospitalities, your retails, wellness, and it's tough. If you want to get into the investment and lending space, your more traditional funding or banking environments with zero assets and collateral. And I think that kind of became a barrier over a period of time, and then there's not a lot of conversation and education about the alternatives. And then the last thing, I suppose, for me that's been evident over the last, 4 months is just the informal nature of women-owned businesses. And what I mean by informal is because it usually is born or stems out of need more than want. It's the supplementing income, it's the ballet lessons, it's the food on the table, the lost job, the unemployed. I've just recently lost my role in an organization and I need to start hustling, and I'm hustling on more than one front. It often is informal in the space of their trade, their structures, their business registration, all things that are crucial to opening up funding and investment channels. So, I mean, we've come a long way. These are but three, I suppose, of the many things that entrepreneurs, but particularly women, are faced with in my experience.
Cool. And Vusi, you're working in very different spaces. Is there anything additional that you feel is unique to the women that you're supporting?
So for us, sure, the township environment is already a cruel space. Yeah. Just by the nature of it being like dog eat dog, because the resources that are thrown at us are so few that only one or two of us can actually make it. But I think what's even worse than that is the way that the outsiders, the people with the funds, look at us. They look at us as a market that is only allowed to be certain things. So we can be the lady that makes the meat at a chisanyama. Right, so there's like 100 of us, and we're allowed to get funding for that. But we can't ever think of anything bigger. We can't think of a spa, like, you know, as in a beauty spa. We can't do that in the township. We can't go to any funder and say, we want to start a Airbnb. What? A hotel service without any property, you know? So we're pigeonholed from the jump, and we can't seem to break that cycle.
Do you see opportunity for innovation from finances maybe in that space then?
There definitely is opportunity, but obviously it's not going to be able to come from us because nobody will hear us. So that's why we find these collaborations with platforms like Zena or guys from Retail Capital who have suddenly identified that township entrepreneurs can actually be judged on other things other than audited financial statements.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So alternative funding is critical.
Yeah.
But we still need somebody from the urban space to almost guarantee us that, you know, that medium.
Great. I think that's so important. And it's actually a little bit heartbreaking that after so many years, like 3 decades plus, the financial services industry doesn't just innovate to really speak to our local contexts and what matters locally. So if you are to position the opportunity that exists, according to you, Vusi, back to you, how would you position it for a big funder like a Retail Capital, for example? What would they have to look forward to? Because I think that for the most part of the problem is that there's low enough hanging fruit to not need to get into that space. But how do you position that opportunity?
So I think it's actually the low-hanging fruit is the fact that you've got a mass market that hasn't been catered to for so long. We've been financially excluded and we're the bulk of the market. And I think if it was any other product, it would be more about looking at it as in why are female entrepreneurs from the township not getting the funds that are available in the market, right? Nobody's looking at the reasons why we're not doing it. Everybody just assumes that we just can't comply, right? Or they're assuming that we don't need the money, we're not entrepreneurial enough, or we're running a little bit of a side hustle, and you know, so there's all of these words that are used to diminish the struggle, to diminish how hard it is for the average black woman who maybe it is a side hustle, so maybe she's a domestic worker, maybe she's consulting after hours, you know, maybe she's doing hair in her house to supplement her income. 70% of her salary from her day job goes to transport because she has to leave her house at 4 a.m. So I think the biggest problem with majority of the products available is that nobody has ever asked the township consumer, like, what do you need? As a woman, what can we do for you? And every time we say, I wish I had easier access to funding, they put these almost loopholes, you know, to say, let's get a business plan. So if I'm just sowing a few, you know, dresses or whatever, just to sell a couple. Now I must get a business plan together. Now I must find somebody that can do the business plan. Then they tell me I need to get a tax clearance. Now I need to find somebody, you know. So all of those additional things. And the irony is, when you look at the township ecosystem, it has been running for years quite successfully. And if there was somebody who could say, like a retail capital, if they were to look and say, what are the funding models currently in use in that township space and working quite well? So banks jumped at the opportunity of stokvels because they thought it was savings. They didn't listen till the end of the sentence, right? So, you know, when we say, are you saving? Oh, yes, I'm saving.
Yeah.
But I'm saving to buy a car.
Yeah.
That's what the stokvel is,
Yeah.
right? So come the end of the year, when all that money is drawn out of
Yeah.
that wonderful stokvel account at Nedbank, then they're just like, oh, where did the money go?
Yeah.
How did they take it out? Because they thought it was a savings account, right? They didn't understand that we were financially excluded from vehicle finance. That's why we stokvel.
Got it.
Or you've got a situation where payday loans. In America, it's a common thing. You
Yeah.
can get a payday loan on every corner. But in South Africa, they're called mashonisas in the township, right? So that's your loan shark. I mean, just listen even to the terminology, right? So, and they come at high interest-bearing loans, and they're expensive. But the majority of people, everybody that you meet that works in urban spaces like these, is on one of those. They're borrowing at an expensive rate. So guys like Retail Capital and any other sort of prominent lender, I guess, should be looking at what's working there.
Yeah.
How can we monetize it without it being punitive
Got
for
it.
the township, you know, individual?
Great response. So Erin, so now we've already gotten into the really tough discussions and conversations. And this is a community question. Do you really feel this conversation is still relevant? Like needing to have these conversations that are specific to funding for women? Because the question that's coming from the community, from Alison Godinier, is at which point do the speakers believe we'll move away from the need to separate the genders in business discussions, you know, and move into more gender unification conversations? Do you really feel this is still relevant?
Sure. We've just started having the conversation. I really feel like if you have to ask me at what time should we stop having these conversations, we barely just got started.
Yeah.
I really feel that, and I mean, look, we all have a voice in our head.
Yeah.
I've got the voice of my mother. I joke about it, but it's actually hashtag funny, not funny. I really want to get to a point where we're having these conversations without the but.
Yeah.
So I'm allowed to be a businesswoman, but I should also remember to take care of my family. I'm allowed to be a successful entrepreneur, but don't forget to put your kids first. As if I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
really? And I think a lot of the times, the challenge comes with us normalizing this conversation about women. And for me, the investment in women goes far beyond financials.
Yeah.
It's the time.
Yeah.
It's the support. It's the listening. It's the understanding. There's an investment required because we haven't really gone to the part where we're trying to listen to understand the need. We're trying to listen to come up with a solution, to match an existing product or offering to a need. And we have to get to the point where we listen to understand to see how do we address that. But for that, you require to have the conversation. So for me, there is still plenty of conversations to have. I'm like Fred, I want to say hi to my little girls who's watching because I'm doing this for them. The introvert in me is screaming. But this is so important, to be having these open conversations and be able to have the discussions where the discussion about finance and business is not with my dad.
Yeah.
I'm proud to have had serious, strong men in my career that influenced my journey. It's very limited women that spoke in the financial space into my career path, and I want to change that.
Yeah.
So I do think the conversation's important. Do I think it's going to change? Well, I'll die trying.
Yeah.
I'm committed to this. This goes way beyond just a cause or a movement.
Yeah.
This is for me a life's purpose. This is the cathedral that we're building for the next generation. So yes, I do think that, look, it's tough. Financial services is tough. This is not for the faint-hearted. You have certain vehicles, you've got certain structures, you have funding governance, you've got rules that you have to play by in order to be able to do more.
Yeah.
But for me, it's important that we get to the point with, do we listen, do we spend enough time understanding the need and then coming up with solutions to do that, which is where the whole purpose, the community, the networking environment has a massive role to play, where we can speak freely without fearing the lashback or sounding like we don't know what we're talking about. Like, it's okay to not know what we're talking about. I've heard people say, I'm foreign to the fintech environment. That's okay, I was foreign to the fintech environment too. But it's tough to say that when you're surrounded by people that are quite fluently conversing in it. So to feel like I'm the one out. But yeah, I think there's a massive opportunity. And each generation has that. Look, every decade or so, 30, 40 years, we fought to be wearing pants.
Yeah.
30 years ago, it was education, voting rights.
Yeah.
I think now we're fighting for something that is just, can we bring down the social norms and barriers that we have put on ourselves to think that I have to step back, or I have to take on other duties, or I shouldn't be too successful because I might offend my partner. And those are all important conversations to have for the sake of our goals that needs to be raised to be powerful and independent. And for that, you need to understand these things. I mean, I can go on forever, but I'm going to try and stop. But the world globally cannot sustain single-income households anymore.
For sure.
Okay? It is important that we start distributing that. Women might be so well conversed and familiar with raising incomes in households, but we did it very much, it was trade exchange. Now we need to get them to understand that you need to kind of formalize this little process, let the money flow, track it somewhere, capture it, understand it. Really educate yourself about the value, the assets, because your trade and your data is your asset, not the car, the house.
Yeah.
That's the commodity now.
For
but
sure.
you need to be able to track that in order to grow, to grow and move somewhere. So, yeah.
Thank you. I do love that response, and I think it's really impossible to disconnect that financing conversation from our social norms and our unique context, right? It's almost like trying to solve something superficial without getting underneath to what really are some of these issues. And so let's get personal. In your own journeys, Vusi, let's go with you. What are some of the unique challenges that you have faced on your path, particularly around finance and dealing in the finance space that you believe might have been attributable to your gender? Let's talk about that.
So, gosh, I don't know. Almost at every turn, I think that all the boys in the room noticed that I'm a girl, right? And I think because I'm obviously in my 40s, so when I was in the room, there weren't very many girls in that space, and let alone black girls from the township. So over the years, we read all of those, how to be the best at what you do, right? So we were constantly, as women, constantly trying to be better. And I think in those days, we were told we had to be more assertive in rooms, right? And so we became assertive. We became so assertive that we out-asserted the boys. And then they have a name for that, right? You know, that's emotional. That's that B girl, right? And then, you know, you find that you're the only one in the room, and the boys start smoking to avoid you, so they can have their chats. And so you learn to, you know, even if you're an asthmatic, you just kind of learn not to smoke, but you do learn to tolerate the passive smoke and a little bit of cancer for the career, right? So, gosh, you know, I think it was just a lifetime of constantly adapting. That's what we learned.
Yeah.
They moved the goalpost, we just became better. They told us we had to learn sports references. We learned them because they would use them in spaces to keep us out, right? So even if you've never ever seen an American football match, if they say quarterbacking, you know exactly what that means. If they say Hail Mary pass, you know what that means.
Goose day.
Right?
Yeah.
So we became skilled overnight. And I think the upside is that, 20 years later, I'm now a turducken, what my kids call me, you know, the turkey, duck, chicken, right? So I'm a combo of absolutely everything that is delicious, right? And they still don't like me, you know, like the boys still don't like me. Because now I'm the angry black woman in the room. So I think when you want to
There's no winning.
No, we don't win. It's a little bit like parenting, you know, especially when you have teens. You'll know, Erin, soon. You just never win. And eventually, when you finally get into your 40s, you realize that it's really about winning for yourself, competing with who you were yesterday. You're not even worried about the other females, because if I can even get onto, that's another subject, about the other females in the room and the fact that the boys have pitted us against each other so well that we all know only one of us can make it. It's the ultimate Survivor, right? And even before Survivor and all those reality shows came out, we were living it in the corporate space. We were being fluffed out by, you know, by the whole community constantly. So my generation of women has learned to zig and zag as much as possible. She's learned to market herself into the tiniest little box and just be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
And at the end, and I think this is something that my girlfriends and I are constantly talking about, that allostatic load just kills you. But I appreciate that there's now a word for it, right? Because there wasn't one before. It was just, she's crazy, or, you know, so, or she's failing. So for me personally, 2 failed marriages, 3 great kids who probably think I'm a failure, and a whole bunch of failed businesses that have been replaced by really amazing solutions, right, to that environment. And I think it's the only thing that we get out of these networking things, is that as women, the pressure is so much. We're constantly being told to be the best, constantly. While the boys walk around with their big stomachs, we're dieting, we're bleaching, we're cutting, we're trying to be thinner, we're not eating out, and we're, you know, so we're constantly being put in this position to try and be sharper, and we really are sharp enough. And I think being in rooms like this, it tells the young woman, and don't even bother because you're not going to win. Just eat the bread.
Bread. Hashtag eat the bread for tonight's tweet. Eat the bread, young ladies.
Dunk it if you can.
Dunk it. Some hot chocolate, something creamy. Most to add it. So we've got a question from Georgie Niven from our community. And Georgie is saying that we know that there's a lot of stuff from the external environment around, you know, unconscious biases that are preventing women from getting access to funding and stuff like that. Certain factors in our communities, you know, sexism, all of that jazz. But the question is, what are some of the common mistakes and or errors which you have seen or might believe that women are more likely to make, which could contribute to this? Because this is both perceived to be a supply side issue, but also a demand side issue. Like, yeah. So, Erin.
Can I go first? Oh.
Yeah.
I don't like using the word mistakes.
Cool.
Okay, because it's learnings.
Yeah.
And learnings change with time. So what you have learned 3 years ago is very much in a fast-moving environment, outdated 6 months later. So you're actually on a continued learning path. So I want to just kind of set that out, that you have to stay curious. And I think one of the common mistakes that start is that my dream is getting shrunken to what I know today and what I have access to right here in my vicinity. So we don't educate ourselves well enough on, for example, the numbers. Understand the numbers so that you can speak about it. And when she says the lingo and the sports analogies, yes, learn that, but understand what your own business numbers mean. You have to understand that to be able to talk about it, to be able to raise awareness and pitch your business and own that. I think one of the other things that we really struggle with is women say that we're really good at multitasking. I mean, it's been proven countless times that we're actually just better at spreading our attention. Okay? If you have 100%, we're just really good at spreading ourselves so thin across all the different things, lessening your ability to focus on one thing. Where, I mean, I admire my husband. He's also an entrepreneur, so I'm kind of in this entrepreneurial space, and my target market is sharing my roof. So I look at, and when he focuses on a new project, he entrenches himself in that, but not just that, he reaches out and try and meet up and connect with people that have experience in that space.
Got it.
And the mistakes that I sometimes see is women get to think that I understand, I've got my product, I've got my solution, I've got my market, I'm going at this, like full force. And they don't necessarily, they've got the network for the security WhatsApp group chatting about the security, and I've got my mom's network group that's chatting about the school stuff. And then there's another WhatsApp group that covers the other stuff, like the family groups, etc. But how many of them have actually got a group where they discuss relevant business, that peer-to-peer conversation around my industry, my sector, what I'm faced with at the moment, and also the life cycle of my business at that time. And I think that's missing. So I do think that that curiosity that we are born with kind of gets stifled along the way, and the need overtakes and we just drive head on into it. So I definitely think that's a big thing for me. But the other thing is, also don't limit your thinking to just you and your business. If COVID taught us anything, collaboration is key. So collaboration exponentially grows your business. It automatically opens up new segments and new markets to you. Reaching out to other people that could complement your industry or complement your business can literally take you overnight to the next level, to the next stage. So open up your mind and your view of your environment so that you can bring other people in. And that's what's so amazing in community-based businesses. Very open to discuss and to support and to supply. But yet, then you get to a point where I think I've now made it, then it's me, my money, and my company. Like, then I get to now it's me. So I do think that we have to learn to expand and grow, and very early on set our businesses up for that success. It's tough to formalize after 4 years. Okay? You don't have the business bank account after 4 years. Now you have it. Now you have to wait another 6 months before you can get the funding. Where if you just did the basic things early on, lay that solid foundations, the growth comes to you. And we sometimes leave that a little bit late.
I love the words you're throwing out: community, collaboration, and I do believe that this gender conversation is just not solely the burden of women to carry. So first, a shout out to the sprinkle of men that have come today. I know it's sometimes scary to enter the room when women are talking about women's issues, so big up to you. And so if you think about from an ecosystem perspective, and this is a question from Sarah Kaji from the community. Vusi, what do you think some of the key elements are that could create a more thriving startup ecosystem that is a lot more inclusive of women, and particularly women who are coming from the communities? 2 or 3 elements that you feel are missing, which could help promote more inclusivity.
So the first thing, without a doubt, is understanding, the perspective that everyone comes from. So changing the paradigm.
Got it.
Right? The second thing would be Sure. Community-based, I think women from communities generally need more support.
Got it.
Emotional, the transition from being an employee to a business owner is quite it's a steep change that needs constant improvement. But also, you want to, and the words incubation, I think, are a little bit, they've got a derogatory connotation. Thanks, Erin. It's after 5. So,
Where's the wine, please?
so yes, so we're trying to find some words that can create that fostered environment, right? So that's assisted without it being offensive. But also, I think that the last thing would be probably amplifying current businesses that are doing well. So if you're looking at, for example, a township entrepreneur operating in an ecosystem like a taxi rank, we very rarely look at that and see how many women are actually being incubated by male taxi owners, right? And what kind of a safe environment it is for them, and how many opportunities that they get in that space. And billions of rands flow in that space. And, to what Erin was saying, in that space, you don't necessarily, not everybody needs to be registered as a business. Because if I'm selling my smoothies in the aisle between the taxi, the cost of registration is too much, right? And I'm making a couple of hundred just to get my kids to school. So understanding that not everybody has to play in the same way, and just respecting that some things have been working for a long time. And we can just acknowledge that and just say, that's another category of business.
Yeah. I actually want to add to that. I think we need to get to a point where we lower the barrier, the entry level, lower the barriers to entry. She refers to it as like this gap, this chasm from crossing over. There's a very quiet, silent space in that time when you are moving from the one environment to the other. And you sometimes go through that cycle more than once in your business life cycle, where it's confusing and it's busy, and you know that you need certain tools and systems, but you don't know where to access it, and it's really tough to implement. So when we start talking about things like having a business bank account, that's massively expensive. We really need to get, we're in 2022. Seriously, we need to get to a point where financial institutions, bank, etc., don't make the money on the account, on the transaction, on all those little percentages at every touch point. There has to be, with the technology and the links and the rapid payment systems. I mean, there's Time Bank and a whole host of others that are making leaps in that, but we need to go faster there, because once we can take all of that compound margins out of their businesses, we can start putting in the rails that's going to untap and open up a lot of opportunity. And I think that's where the challenge is. It's so expensive for a small business owner to make that transition. To register, to get the bank account, to put in the point of sale device. We have to take those costly margins out and use the fintech, the technology that we've got at our disposal, the smart people in South Africa. There's so many developers we've got here to come up with solutions to do those integrations, to make those platforms available, and not put the cost there, but on the on-sell, the additional products, or the journey that you're taking with that business owner. There's other opportunities to leverage than there at the core source, the point of trade.
Just causes so much friction already.
Exactly.
So Vusi touched on support, and it's a loaded word, right? And there's a specific question for you, Erin, around that. From Munira Karim from our community. And the question is, with the increase in women's organizations forming to support and empower other women, what is Zena doing, offering differently and uniquely? Are you just another?
No. No. Look, I think what we did differently is we partnered with people like Vusi, right up front. There's some serious, I've got my whole fan club here tonight of the Zena team. There's a lot of the ladies here that came on that journey with us. We listened. We formed the collective about 8 months ago, which was 150 businesswomen that met went on focus groups together. I want to actually give a shout out to them because I'm sure some of them are signed in as well tonight. They took part in the conversation, and we really tried to understand what the pain points were that women are faced with instead of just launching another initiative. What we're also trying to do different is to use where other bodies, institutions, or associations have formed to support women, partner with them instead of trying to duplicate the effort. So we want to do smart collaborations to enhance this environment. And then I think the third thing is I've got a seriously committed, passionate team of people. The funding and the financial support and assistance that we provide, we also try and educate people through each of those funding journeys that they come through on the platform. And every time that we get that application or we get that discussion around finance, it walks through all the way, it touches 7, 8 people's hands that discuss, that call, that goes all the way up. How can we, not how does it fit or does it fit or does it not fit the mold? We try and understand, is there not a way to break our existing processes, systems and procedures in order to find a way to support? Because in that support, there's also learning.
Yeah.
And out of that learning, we might come up with a whole new model that never existed before. So that is what Zena aims to do, is we want to go out, we want to learn, we want to understand, and then we want to come up with something that is suited to an industry and a segment that might be vastly different to what we've catered for before.
Yes. So I want to give a second to our audience here. If there's a burning question, and to also check on our social media questions if there is something burning that we need to respond to. So the audience here first. Yes.
Cool. So thank you so much, first of all. Super, super insightful conversation. Like you said, super relevant to always continue to unpack and have a conversation. But I think what I want to understand, and maybe you can also, I think all three of you can weigh in on this one here. When we look at investing in terms of the continent, right? Big investors and even some of the smaller, earlier stage investors are all going for the hot topics, the big city projects, the sexy startups, as we call them, right? And as we understand it, a lot of women and a lot of township entrepreneurs solve human problems.
Yeah.
So they're building businesses, they're building solutions.
They're building businesses and they're building solutions that are not what the people with the money are looking for, in essence. So by design, we're missing each other. And I think I would like to understand, firstly, 2 things. Number one, where are the doors where, from your perspectives, you're sitting and going, women would kill in this market. Why are there not more women in these markets? Because the money is there. So what are the markets that you know and understand are markets that women would be better suited at, where we should be looking at entering? Because we can't keep building for solutions where the money isn't there. Sadly, it's all about timing. I think you can build something that's relevant, but if the money isn't there, then it won't build, right? So we need to understand where are the open doors where we can go in and where we can start to thrive and build on that. And then the second part being, wait, where did I start off?
The first question is, where are the open doors where women can kill it?
Yes, where's the money? And then I think secondly is, how do we get to the money with the human solutions? So if we're building, because we can't not build for the human problems, because as Africans, we're building for a better quality of life, right? We're not building for sexy and luxurious benefits, but we're all building for a better quality of life. So where do we look, in essence, maybe, for that capital? Where do we find, or where do we speak for the creation? How do we tap into, Africans with capital looking to solve African problems? Where are those tables made?
That's a very good one. So I am happy to help my panelists out on that one, because I think that's such an incredibly important question. I really believe part of, and this is showing in the data as well, part of the bigger issues that we have around financing is just how few women capital allocators we have globally, let alone in Africa. We're looking at 3% of people who are in the VC space, who are in the PE space, being women. And that's problematic, because I do feel naturally we're a lot more inclined to seeing the opportunity in the human problems, right? And not going for the quick, low-hanging fruit around, like we can make a quick buck selling that widget. We're really a lot more passionate about solving that human problem. And so how do we encourage a lot more women to get into finance, for example? How do we encourage a lot more women to get into science and technology? Because I don't believe we have to sacrifice one for the other. The human problem is so vast that it creates an opportunity. Wherever there's a challenge, there is an opportunity, right? And so creating the opportunities and spaces for turning the human problem into a financial problem so that when we do present it to your traditional male financer, they can see it as money whilst we know we're solving from the human problem too. I think it's too excluded, and it's not one or the other. I've found a lot of the women who are in my circles who are investing and putting up investment theses around investing in women, when they're presenting that this is what I'm raising a fund for, the first question that they get asked is that, is it an NGO? Because the woman problem is perceived to be a social problem, which is perceived to be a human problem, which is perceived to be not profitable, right? So how do we get more women into the financing space? Because we can translate uniquely a human problem into a financial problem, which helps us get into the more traditional spaces as one of the solutions. And so do encourage particularly your daughters. I think our next generation needs to be comfortable with starting to talk about money from an early age so that these spaces don't feel so intimidating and so exclusive. Yeah, that's one solution. Vusi.
So I've got a solution that's a little bit different in that I look at that space and you see that there's a lot of male funders, right, and predominantly white with lots of money. I only just recently found out about DFIs because nobody ever talks about them to township entrepreneurs, right? And that's with playing with Erin and them that I realized that. So my thing is, as township entrepreneurs, the best thing that we can do is treat funding like dating, right? So dress it up, hide everything that you need to, Spanx all the way, ladies. Tie everything up, just be a side and walk into that room and sell yourself as much as you possibly can. Because what I'm learning now is that majority of these funders are chomping at the bit to fund us. They want to hear an African story. They want to hear about how many amazing township entrepreneurs we have, how many women-run businesses that we're going to fix, right? All of that is what they call now this, what do they call it, blue strategies, right? Blue ocean strategies. So we just need to learn how to package ourselves for that date and make sure that we bring the A game and cover all isbejej, I don't know what the English word is, your extra bits, right, packed away, and sit there unable to breathe, right, until you get out of that interview, because that's what it takes. And without a doubt, every room that I've been in, and I've been punting the township angle, punting the township experience especially, I found that I walk out of there with a lot of funding for township entrepreneurs. Not really for myself and my great businesses, but for the women that I'm representing, because it's a great story, right? And there are so few collective women groups that are able to position themselves in that way. So, blue ocean strategy.
Do you want to add on to it?
I'm going to take a completely different angle, and I'm not going to talk to you like I would have talked to my daughter. I mean, if you have to ask me where is the open doors to the money, you have to, oh gosh. You have to open that door where you have something that no one else has. Yeah. Because that authenticity and that realness comes across and people feel it without you selling it really hard. And then have your plan, have your network, speak to Vusi, she really knows how to package a credit note. And then you put all of that beautiful package together and you go on and you open that, I almost used a word that my children shouldn't hear, but then you open that door and you walk in and you own that, because I think that is something, if we only do what everybody else does and where all the money flows, it's like another gold rush. eventually you end up with a whole bunch of people in that space ruining it for everybody else. So do go there where you feel you can contribute and the success comes with that, and you build something, and it takes long. Everything worthwhile, don't be in it for the instant gratification, because anything worthwhile takes a lot of work, but it's the commitment, and that's why you have to be so very passionate about it. Because once the energy and the flair and the doubts come in, and the fear of the unknown and the fear of rejection, you still in your heart have that passion that you opened that door with in the first place. So I do think it's important that we don't always run where everybody else is, but that we first look back and just see, what do I have to offer into this market? What can I bring that no one else can? And I know this is a fluffy answer, but this is kind of also the conversations I'm trying to stimulate, because there's the obvious stuff that can create, there's renewable energy, that's a new thing that everybody's now chasing into. There is online e-commerce, a whole bunch, Bitcoin, you name it. There's so many industries that are opening up every year that people are chasing into. But you need to know where your niche is and where that thing is that you can add into that space. I've seen people that are artists that make a lot of money because they're so passionate. I've seen doctors with practices that make money because they're so passionate about it. And some common thread that are there across industries, and yes, my community experience is not as deep as Vusi's, but I'm sure she'll be able to tell you thousands of stories of women that passionately started making clothes or providing solutions in their own environments that really excelled, because that's what they love to do and what they wanted to bring to the party. So, yeah, it's a bit of a left field answer, but I do believe it's worth saying. We need to do what we love too.
We have a lot of questions from the community, and I just want to apologize in advance that we're not going to get through all of them. And I hope some of them have already been responded to within the context of the conversations. This is more of a personal one, and I think you've probably alluded to it a little bit. But if you were to give, this is from Danae Roll. Do you have any tips, Vusi, for breaking free from the imposter syndrome in male-dominated industries? Because I think you've talked about, like, tuck in, don't breathe, walk in with confidence and kill it. But what are you telling yourself internally in order to be able to do this? Because Danae is saying that she's in a position of authority with a lot of male colleagues, but she still questions herself.
So I get that question quite a lot, especially from young black professionals.
Yeah.
And it's always, what do I do? And the first thing I say to them is, when you're in that room, pretend you're a white man.
Yeah.
Because honestly, you cannot go wrong.
As a white man.
No. And what it has taken you to be in that room to begin with.
Yeah.
Right? You've already had climbed through every single fire, encircled hurdle that there is. And to get in there, you've beat out hundreds of other black kids from your neighborhood to get into that room. You own that room.
Yeah.
Right? You're probably the most educated person in that room because you've had to be.
Yeah.
And by educated, I don't just mean academically.
Yeah.
I mean social skills and ability to read a room. Because I can tell you one thing about township people is their ability to read a room is uncanny. And it's a skill that you can't teach. It's just and now they even have a word for it, the adversity quotient.
Yeah.
Right? So there's all these terms, but we were doing this stuff for years, right? As just surviving being in the township. So all of these things, we've packaged them so nicely now that they're actually pluses now. And so I always, when I'm coaching young professionals, I tell them, you can never, ever be an imposter. You're probably over-educated to be in that space. Everybody in that room is thinking, I recently sat on a team where I was the only woman, obviously the only black woman, and probably 10 years younger than the closest competitor. But what I realized in that space is that none of them expected me to be the best. So you don't really have to even be the best. You are the white man in the room, guys. Like, we finally arrived. So just be you. None of these things where once you're in that room, own it and enjoy it and learn as much as you can. Just being there. They're saying you've arrived. Nobody's got the guts to kick you out, right? Chela in Xhosa.
I also want to, I mean, we all struggle with that, I suppose, to a certain extent. And that's why I'm saying having the conversations are important. Because if I can teach my girls very early on normalizing this conversation that we're having, they're not going to feel as if they're in the imposter in the room. So I think we've got a very key responsibility here. But secondly to that, what I've found that helps in taking that voice out of your head of what if I fail, what if I screw this up, please let me not say the wrong thing. All the thoughts that went through my head before I came here tonight, right? All those things, speaking to people beforehand and speaking to people at work and speaking to colleagues and speaking to people I admire reinforces my ability to be able to have the conversation in the first place. So I do think, again, if you have that voice, that gnawing feeling that you've got, open up your mouth. Don't just sit in the corner and freak out about it. Accept it. And there's a very great podcast, it's a TED Talk, Stop Telling Women They've Got Imposter Syndrome. It's actually something we should be saying to ourselves. But it's actually, I think it's one of the most listened to TED Talk or TED Talks that's there. It's amazing. A lot of research in there. But it definitely is something that you will feel because we're intuitive and in touch with ourselves. That thought does come up.
Got it.
But reinforce yourself by having conversations where you actually test where you get to show off your skills. Then you actually realize that you're being stupid about this. So, yeah.
I love it. There was a question here.
Oh, me, the question was ages ago.
Sorry.
Do you remember your conversation? your question?
So the question is, and I'll tell you why I'm asking the question. The question is, how often do you guys talk shop or talk business with your girlfriends? So if you're at a ladies' lunch, or if you go to the spa. And the reason why I ask is because I believe that one of the key reasons why the white man is top of the pops in the boardroom is because he probably came off the golf course the day before, and he's got the 411 on what's going to happen in that meeting before he even walked in. And I think that is so key. And I'll tell you right now, I don't speak with my girlfriends about business. They speak about clothes and shopping and boys. And I think if we have to take one or two steps back, that's probably where it starts. It's chatting to each other, building each other up, getting that confidence. And then the second thing is, having those conversations would probably maybe in the long term get us off the D&I investment list. So, you're talking about, and it's amazing that we're on that list.
Yeah.
So you're saying that these investors want to invest in you because townships, it's diversity, it's inclusion, but actually we should just be getting invested in purely by the fact that we're a prominent
Really
business.
successful business.
Sure.
And that comes in my mind from having the conversations with your network on the golf course or wherever it might be. So the question really is how often do you have those conversations with your girlfriend?
I think, Kate, for me, it's more about how many of my girlfriends are sitting in the boardroom in a position where we can have a conversation, right, that will then impact business. And that's where it starts. So majority of the times, there's almost a quota system when it comes to boardrooms. They'll have maybe 3 women maximum, because apparently 3 is the magic number, right?
You've got it right, Fred. 3 is the magic number.
And then also they try to be as diverse. So it will never be 3 Xhosa Cape Townian girls, because, then it's like colonization, right? So it makes it very difficult for me and all of my girlfriends to be having those conversations in our personal space, because all of us are clawing to make a living in our own little silos, you know. So when we do get together, we're sharing the collective sadness.
The war stories.
Yeah, you know, we're showing each other the scars and the scar tissue that's gone over the scars, and we're crying into some of them, into their champagne, and, you know, like, just because it's like a hard life being a woman, right? And so I think the utopian ideal is for us also to go to the spa with 3 of my besties and have the 3 of my besties be the same people that I see in the boardroom the next day, and be in a position where we're all decision makers and we're all, you know, have the discretionary power to change things, but also to hire each other, because that's the other thing. You know, how many times we hear about the old boys network. And I'm a local, I went to a girls' school, but there's no old girls network. I can't walk into a room and ask, how many springers are in the house? You know, like, you know, whereas boys can do that kind of thing, right? So I think we've got to possibly get to a point where we're learning from the boys as quickly as possible, and getting into those spots as fast as we can, and forming these alliances with each other, you know, where Erin and I get put onto a stage like this, and we work on products together, and maybe other people don't know this, right? So it would have been like a pitch to these 2 women, one white, one black, one, you know, like, right? So, and so, you know, some of these things, they happen. And if we didn't have the private relationship that we had, this would have been a different conversation, people. This room would be split in 2, right? So we need to make these conversations. We have to have them all the time. We have to break through all these stereotypical South African barriers and ask white people, this is to you, ask the hard questions to the black person in the room, and, you know, we will answer those questions without taking out the bile necessarily sometimes. Sorry, but you know what I mean? We will tolerate this process, but we work really hard in the finance space as women to try and pull each other along, because there's so few of us that we can't even be racist in that space. It's just about being female in that space, right? And I think that is something that we must take into every industry, because it's the one thing we've managed to do quite well, right? Is to form these alliances in those rooms, because there's so few of us, right? Then maybe we'll get to that utopian ideal you speak so fondly about, Kate.
I must say, I actually kind of seek it out. And if I haven't had a conversation, not all of so I've got different circles though. And in certain circles, that conversation does come up, and then in other circles, I scare them with my Moody's and Fitch ratings and stuff, and then the conversation very quickly goes on to Tommy Tippy and other bottles. So there's different circles that you have, and then you have to also be mature enough to know which conversation fits into which room. Yeah. I've tasted it actually, because as a psychology nerd, I like to test these things, but I have looked at it. But then if there's a time that goes by and I haven't had a nice business conversation and I already know what's going on in Xavier's world, I will invite Sita over and we'll talk shop. And we do that. So I will invite one of my other friends over and I'll say, well, how far are you? And I've got a very cool cousin who she loves to talk shop, to the point where the guys will go sleep and then we will still be talking shop. And I think knowing who is that circle, who's that network. And then obviously I'm going to say, if I run out of people, then I just jump on Zena, and there's plenty of women willing to talk shop till late hours of the night. So we've had discussions in early hours of the morning. So I do think you have to find that tribe that wants to have the discussion, because there's also nothing worse than putting somebody else in the position where they have to talk, pick a sport, soccer, and they don't know anything about soccer. Then you make them feel out. So I do think find your tribe and then have it as often as you can and create those conversations, because I would love to see my girls hear us talk about these kind of things. It's good for them to hear that. But seek it. I think that's where we're trying to get to now, in this generation, is seeking out those conversations.
So there's a question from Wyoming, and the question is around how there's a perception that there's a lot more funding opportunities and investments for the youth category.
Yeah.
And what opportunities are we seeing for women over 40? You're out of the youth category. So
What? There's no more funding for women over 40?
I don't know, you tell me. Wyoming is worried.
So I think for the last 20 years, I've watched in my space in particular, it's always more funding. When you're a youth business owner, there's lots of funding for youth, but you just can't seem to find it.
Got it.
Then when you're in your 40s, there's so much business money available for, what do they call mature businesses, experienced business owners, but we still can't seem to find it. So I don't know whether there's a little bit of gaslighting happening here, but or I'm just, missing the trends. But township businesses, every year we hear a bigger number. I think last year they said 200 billion is what's available in terms of just government funding.
Got it.
But I don't know a single person ever. I can't even point to a single business that has actually gotten that money. So I'm starting to think that money doesn't exist, right? But and so it's the same for any of these funds, except for the funds that are now where we've repositioned and repackaged ourselves.
Yeah.
Those are the only funds that are still available, and they're not concerned about your age. Thank goodness. They're more concerned about ticking off those indicators, right? So, are you eradicating poverty? Are you not like small things, right? So it's always those kinds of things, right? But those, at least we can play in that space.
Do you feel, which is kind of linked to Praise's question, that bucketing women and into very rigid big women buckets?
Where's this going?
Do you think bucketing them into very big buckets, I'm paraphrasing phrase, sorry, has affected opportunities for people with more diverse gender identities? Like if you just throw them into one bucket, do you feel there's a need to say women over 40, women youth, black women, white women? Like, do you feel it's doing us justice to put it into one big box, or do we need to get a little bit more granular and maybe it opens up more opportunity? Like, what are you seeing in your spaces?
Oh no, we have to make it granular.
Got it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So this talking about intersectionality and really thinking about what are the unique needs,
I think where we're going and where the world's going is the more choice, the better, right?
Got it.
And I don't think that we should ever create, like in the space that you're moving into, there's fragrances for men, there's fragrances for women, there's clothing for men, there's clothing for women, there is unisex. So the more you can put into the market, the more opportunities you give people to access something that works for them.
Got it.
So I do believe, like what Vusi mentioned now, is the more granular, the more choice, the more opportunities you open up, the more doors there is to choose from, maybe the easier it is for people to find the product or the solution that works for them, that fits their business, their industry, their life cycle, because there's also different fundings for different life cycles. You get startup funding that you can't get when you are a mature business. There's loans that you cannot access when you're a startup. There is products for in between, and then you've got products that are very much designed at attracting a younger market. There's products for a more mature market, the more premier private banking type offerings. So I do think that we need to get to that point where we don't necessarily, where equals one does not mean equal excluding everything else. Yeah, there is opportunities, I think, and the more there is, the better.
I have to say though, in all of these different breakdowns or intersections, yes, thank you. I'm yet to see a person who's in a privileged position opting to be a Black township entrepreneur. So if we can get to that point where it's so equal across all the different strata that you've got somebody sitting at the top of the privileged pyramid saying, hey, I like it down there. I want to be that girl, you know? Then you know we're equal. Then we can start talking about intersectionality. So until the very, like the person who has been the bottom, the pits, the absolute like throwaway, you know, because as a Black or as township entrepreneurs or underserved community entrepreneurs, whatever we want to call it, bottom line is we really are the bottom of the barrel in everything, in services, in products, in offerings, in men, in, you know, and we're leading in all the wrong things, so GBV, and, you know, so like, I just want us to imagine, and it's all very well to sit in these environments and always be talking about intersectionality, but as South Africans, we can never even consider intersectionality as a topic until every Black person is sitting at the top of the pyramid for privilege.
I'm going to try and squeeze in a couple of more questions. There, yeah.
Hey, so I guess this conversation is more about funding.
Yeah.
You know, you tend for men to be more or less agreeable. Women tend to be more agreeable. How, when you actually are at the table to get funding from investors, can you validate the larger ticket amounts that men are actually asking for, and how can you really equip yourself? Because often people will say to yourself, oh, you should get a mentor, right? And that's wonderful. But often when you have to look at the numbers of a business, somebody is really having to walk that journey with you to like really deep down understand your business, the numbers, whether you're going to get to that meeting with the investors and actually be able to ask for a very decent amount. So at the moment, I know there's opportunities to access a community and so on, but unless your business is getting into an accelerator, there's also like no incentive necessarily for a mentor to deep dive with you and really get to grips with those numbers and help equip you for that conversation when you are with investors. So there's two parts to this question. A, who are the allies? And I know there's your platform, but also is there a source or a blog article where we can have a list of all of the VCs that are currently looking to support female founders, first of all. Second of all, how do we find the mentorship? And you can't find the stuff online. You cannot go on YouTube because this information is specific to
your business,
it's
your industry.
so specific, and also to an African economy, right?
Yeah.
So where do I get that information, and how do I incentivize women who would understand my battle scars to actually equip me for a conversation so I can ask for what men would ask for and to feel comfortable doing that?
Yeah. So when it comes to a list of VCs, I'm going to point to the MC here because that's her game. I haven't been able to find VC funding for my space because they think townships are too high risk. Sorry.
I'm not sure which one of us.
I think I'm being censored. But in terms of mentors, I would never suggest that you get a mentor to help you with the finance side. As much as Zena is a great platform, the community is great, and you've got access to women who are further along in their business. But when it comes to getting ready for a pitch and you need your numbers to be on point, you want to hire someone. You want to pay. I firmly believe that you get what you pay for, right? So if you're paying somebody whose sole job is to get your numbers right for that particular pitch, do it, right? Every time, do it. Sacrifice the hair money, sacrifice everything. Put the money into the numbers guy, right? And it always needs to be a guy. Not because I don't believe that women can do it, but you know, when as a parent, for instance, when you are not a parent and you go into a place and you see a child misbehaving, the first thing you say is, oh my God, I'll never do that with my kids, right? And then you have kids, and you're that mom doing exactly that, right? So I think for us as women, going into a room full of men, doesn't matter how well we prepare for it, they're looking at us as women, so they're already lowering expectation or total payout or whatever. But if you come into that room with a guy, usually, this is what I do. My strategy is very simple, low-hanging fruit. So if they want a guy in the room, I bring a guy in the room, even if he's an actor. Hire him. Hire him. I have learned to play by the rules. If I know, and I research my finance, now we have social media. Now you can do a deep dive on any person and find out exactly what their likes are. Go in there like you're dating, I'm telling you. Go in there, do all the opposition research. Find out what they like. Are they a guy's guy? You know, like a lad's lad. Do they play rugby? Find a guy who fits the brief and go in with him, even if he's reading from your slides. Focus on the fact that you just want that money. Forget about everything else. And that's what I do. None of the ego stuff. And that's what I've learned here the hard way from like after 20 years. I used to go in there, you know, ball busting, thinking that I've got enough testosterone for all of us, right? No money, right? So I've learned. If the boys say, bring a boy in, bring a boy in. Hire an actor. There's so many out-of-work actors. And the more beautiful he is, the more funding you will get.
Tools for Survival 101 over there. So that's one tool. Erin, do you want to?
You also, so when you get to this space, it's easier to ask for a lot of money than for a little money. And I will have a whole podcast where I will invite Carl to come and explain this concept as our CEO. But it's easier to get 10 million than to get 1 million.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's all about the ability to invest in something that is, you're going to do the same amount of work, essentially. So there is a niche on both sides of accessing that capital and preparing your business proposition, your plan, your financial projections and forecasts to untap that amount of money, to justify that. There's a sliding scale of how you do that, so it is very important to do that. Yes, mentors, coaches on the platform, that's not going to be able to answer that question. But I mean, I've got my content managers here. They will now work in the next 2 weeks. We'll sit down and we'll come up with a list of VCs that's in this space. I think that's clear out of this conversation for me tonight, that is not necessarily something that's easily accessible. So, yeah.
Your content people are listening. Something I saw that was really valuable with accelerators is actually that they know the type of partner businesses that are good for a startup stage or any stage. And I think it goes to your point. One of the speakers' questions was like, people in the services industry, when you're starting a company, you need to know lawyers. You need to know accounting people. And then people are only like taking you as a credible business when you have like some sort of master service agreement contract drawn up by a lawyer. Otherwise, they're like, what are you? What is this? You're playing in the sand here. You know? And so what is the list of like enabling companies that are actually like, if you Google lawyer Cape Town, you're going to get your ass handed to you. Do you know what I mean? You need to find a lawyer that's appropriate for your stage and, you know.
So I think when it comes to tools and service providers, that's an easier solution than getting the right person to talk you through that pitch, to be able to open those doors for you to that kind of VC investment. And I think it's important to the BAU or the daily operational stuff, there is people that can assist you with that. And that can be a peer-to-peer coaching. But accessing and unlocking capital for a very early start, that's a job in itself. And you need to, that's where key networking and it's who you know is very important. You can walk into a room with 2 people and within 10 minutes they can tell you who the 15 people are that are making that investment. So it's really, it's never been truer. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Yeah. And that's very relevant in that space. And then the next step is when they have set up or when they have connected you or when they have brought you in touch with those 15 people, you need to know your stuff. Because when you walk into that room, the whole thing about whomever you take with you, and I mean take that person that connected you with if you have to, but take people with you that's able to assist you. And we spoke about it earlier. Have a plan, know your numbers, and educate yourself that you're comfortable with yourself and your conversation and what you are taking into that space. Because what I often see when it comes to the discussion and the untapping of it and getting into the nitty-gritty detail, that's when the wheels come off. Because somebody hasn't thought about all the granular elements of the product that they're trying to put out into the market. So, there is like a whole workshop for this. I mean, we're recording this, right?
Yeah.
We definitely, I mean, that's a very important thing, because also you'll probably go through that process. I mean, even big companies do fundraisings, and you'll see it all the time, every 3 to 5 to 6 years, especially in your tech environment. So trust me, they pay a company to come in and also assist their business to put out these kind of notes programs into the market. So get to the people that connect you with the people that are able to assist you with that, and we'll sit down. And I mean, there is options on the table, but it's a different conversation, because VC and funding and loans are completely different sides of the same coin. You need the one to get to the other one eventually.
And I think that's where the unsung heroes for early stage, the accelerators, they just don't get enough credit for that. I think those are definitely spaces where that hand-holding support, those intros, thinking through your valuations become important. And I know a lot of them have gotten a bad rap about just, they just need to train you and don't give you that hand-holding. But that education alone is really critical, because most of the times it feels like an entrepreneur is speaking a completely different language from an investor. And that's because of it not even knowing that funding and loans is very different from VC. Those basics, very different conversation, very different things they're actually looking for. In terms of investors in the VC space that are investing in women or particular sectors in the business, useful lists are, you can look up Brighter Bridges. They've got a whole list of who's been investing in Africa. Africa, the Big Deal database, they're amazing. They just keep track of everything. There's SAVCA, which is the body for South Africa VC. They are compiling these lists all the time. And so I guess getting into spaces like this, where we can have those conversations and share those lists. Sometimes my husband says because I'm also an academic, that academics are very useful if only they could stop speaking to each other and actually. So I think from the investor space as well, we really speak to each other and just not enough with the audience. And so those lists would be a good starting point to just see. You're able to see who looks like you, the type of business that looks like you, and who invested in them. Yeah. Cool. So,
I'm part of it now. I run that game. But in the beginning, it's fun. And it's hard if you can't get to an accelerator. Like if your business isn't a sexy business or whatever, then
There are no accelerators, by the way, for my township markets. So I know, I feel your pain. This is why we invest in women. Where's Fred? Yeah, right there. Because women do that. We go into powder rooms sometimes. Sorry.
no,
We do go into the ladies' room. I mean, I once went into an event once, and while I was having my jumpsuit zipped at the back, right? Because obviously the jumpsuit was designed with the back zip, which I couldn't reach. But while the stranger was lifting up my jumpsuit, she happened to share that, she'd heard me speaking and she actually enjoyed whatever. Could I please come and speak to one of her groups of women? And I can't tell you how many additional gigs, so to speak, or exposure, opportunities of exposure, for exposure of the business and the township environment, that it gave us in that space, just from that one woman who was zipping up my jumpsuit, right? That's a killer jumpsuit, yeah? And so I think when people ask us about investing in women, that's what it is. Yeah. We are constantly reaching across the aisle to help somebody, Babies crying in a trolley. immediately just grab it without even asking, right? So it's who we are as women. And so it's easy to say, I'm going to put all my money on Erin because I know she's going to use it wisely, right? Yeah. And we all know that if you give a woman 100 Rand, she uses 90 Rand of that on the household and 10 on herself. You give the same 100 Rand to a man, it's 90 Rand on himself, 10 on the household.
I'll also give a shout out to one of the platforms that my husband is running, Pranary. It brings entrepreneurs with investors, and so you get opportunities to pitch, but at least you will learn what type of questions they're asking, what they're looking for in particular type of business models. And so we see all types of entrepreneurs, from the person who's selling the widget to the person who's building a SaaS platform. But there are investors in each of those spaces that have specific things about what they're looking for. And so you can look that up and maybe just attend a demo day and start to get comfortable with that type of language. I think the more exposure you get to it, to that type of thing, the less intimidating it becomes. Yeah. And so we're winding up now. And so I guess linking to the final question from Vusi, how are you believing uniquely that you can create other catalysts in your own communities? What unique things do you want to keep doing in your community to create other catalysts? Because it also gets lonely being the only door breaker. So what are the unique things?
So I think the most critical one is access.
Access.
Sure. My proximity to privilege has helped me open a lot of doors, and I'm happy to Trojan horse my experiences, right? So, because it does get boring to be the only black at the table. So I do my best to expose everybody in my markets to these spaces. But there's also another thing that most people don't understand about, which is unique specifically about South Africa, is that the funders want access, direct access to the consumer. I mean, everybody, even the retailers, everybody wants to hear directly from that lady standing at the Chisanyama, what is it that she really wants, right? And at the same time, you've got the consumer desperate to tell Tiger Brands that she's not just there for the sap, right? So there's this eagerness on both sides to have a conversation, but there's no space for that conversation. And that's actually what I bring to the table. I create the platform. I am the guide that will allow both sides to then have a conversation. And I speak white and I speak black. So, you know, the Tur Duncan again.
Erin, your final one. Are you feeling optimistic about the future, or do you feel this conversation is just a nice to have and it will continue being a nice to have? It was a community question. I can't find it, so I can't give credit to the right person, but are you feeling, optimistic, or do you feel like it's still like a slow train?
My answer is easier. I don't know why I'm thinking so. Yes, I am absolutely. I wouldn't have stayed here. I love our country. I love how much we love to be here and give back and take care of each other and support each other. I love our culture deeply. Without going into, I have a very colorful background, and I've been in a lot of places, and I had the privilege of parents that have broken doors down on so many fronts, and that's why I suppose it's easy for me to have that. And when a lot of people often get disheartened by things they see, where my positiveness comes from, and I mean, I look at what's happening currently in Australia, and how people are locked inside, and how many of their rights have been taken away from them. I'm looking at this war that Fred and them predicted to break out in the Ukraine. I'm not really, but close. I'm looking at the catastrophes in other countries, and they will not take our freedom. we're a very proud country.
Yeah.
And that's what makes me excited and what makes me positive and what makes me want to give back.
Yeah.
And as long as I can step inside with this gorgeous lady
Yeah.
next to me that is so eloquently puts a lot of things that a lot of people are afraid to speak about, as long as I can have that, as long as we have the platforms and we encourage the conversation, I'll never leave. I'm very happy with where we are going, and I can see my children staying here and driving the country and going places and doing things. So yes, I do believe if in any place, look, it's tough.
Yeah.
This place is not for sissies,
Yeah.
for many reasons. But how else would we build character?
Yeah.
So I'd rather have that than an easy ride and a privileged position where you don't appreciate the big and the small things in life. So I bring it on.
Yeah.
Let's break down more barriers.
Yeah.
Let's shatter more ceilings.
Yeah.
I love that. So I think in any country, this country allows us to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
very excited.
On that note, please give my wonderful panelists a round of applause.
And thanks everybody online. I feel like I'm a little bit tall. I feel like I need to sit on the. Can I sit here? Is that okay? I'm not going to knock everything down or fall over. But anyway, thanks to the very, very busy discussion online as well. There was an incredible amount of input from the various online channels. And just to your point, Vusi, about the going to the bathroom and being zipped up at the back. There's online. There's a bunch of people reaching out to each other and making business deals and happening, all kinds of connections happening and so on. So it's just really encouraging to see. And this is obviously why we need to have these kind of community events. I know that, there's a few others. I know Future Females, for example. I chatted to Lauren yesterday. They're doing some great stuff. There's Startup Grind, for example. There's a bunch of different communities that are just encouraging people to get together, interact, ask the deep, difficult questions and the things that are all on our minds. And it's not good for us to sit inside our rooms in our pajamas all the time. So as Zhuja, my awesome colleague at the back there, says always, let's put on some makeup, let's get out there, let's have a glass of wine, let's ask each other the questions that we want to ask. And this is why it's so important. I feel like I was educated tonight properly. I want to maybe have a glass of wine afterwards and ask for advice as a man. Like, what can we do to make this better? Because I think there's a whole event just on that, in terms of our role and clearly there are some pretty deep challenges here. I don't think we've solved them tonight, but I think we've had an important conversation. So thank you. Can we have another round of applause for our awesome guests? Thank you, guys. That was really, really amazing, and really enlightening. And I know there's a bunch of people waiting for the prize. Before I announce the winner, I just want to say a big shout out to my team. Zhuja, Brian, Yolandi, Moabi. Randall is actually with his son in hospital. Shout out to you, Randall, my man. We love you, brother. And we just have Louis Lucanio. I know Lucanio's online at the moment. We've just got such an amazing crew. And Siyabonga. I was getting to Siyabonga. and there's a bunch of people from our Kailicha community, and it's just so great to have everybody here in real life and patching in from online. This is, I think, the big step forward that we've seen through the last 2 years, is that we've been able to reach a bigger audience, have these conversations in a wider sphere. So I'm really, really stoked and really proud of this team pulling everything together under sometimes quite stressful circumstances. We'll tell you stories over a glass of wine. What happens behind the scenes with all the tech issues and things that leading up to events can do to you. I want to encourage everybody who isn't a member of Heavy Chef, go to heavychef.com, sign up. It's free to sign up. You get 30 days free. Thereafter, it's 250 Rand per month for an all-you-can-eat pass to all of our learning bites. There's thousands of videos and little micro courses online with all the benefits attached. But if you can't afford that, then email us, go to heavychef.org, and you can get it for free. 100%. All applications are accepted. No questions asked. So do join us. Join this community. It's an amazing community, and it's really a privilege to be serving the entrepreneurs that, as I said in the beginning of this, are changing the world. So, without further ado, I'm just checking the messages from the team. There's a lot of conjecture from the Accenture actuaries. The actuaries sitting at the back there in the corner. And it looks like the winner is Jasantha Singh. I don't know if is she here. No, I'm guessing by the fact that nobody's jumping up. It's an online Jasantha Singh from Aurora Love Natural. So Jasantha, if you're watching this, congratulations. You are the proud owner of a 14,000 Rand HP laptop. Which we will be sending through to you via Parcel Ninja, another one of our partners. And just so that you know that it is, I am told, a skincare brand. And Jasantha is the founder and cosmetic formulation scientist of Aurora Love Natural. So that is freaking awesome. I want one of those in my life. I don't know what it is, but it sounds epic. So, guys, those of you who are here, stick around. Let's have a glass of wine together. Let's have some juice. There's CBD water there as well if you want to get high. Just kidding, just kidding. You don't get high off of that stuff. It's still pretty rad. And thank you all for coming. And thanks to our guests. Thanks to our partners. Thanks to the team. Cheers, guys.
singing.